What we're going to cover today. Today we're going to cover some basic computer definitions. We're going to go over the things that you may not know but should know. A lot of the terms may be familiar, but we're going to go ahead and explain them a little bit in further detail so you get a stronger understanding of your computer basics. We're also going to discuss some hints and tips on computer operations. And following that will be tutorials on most of these hints and functions and things like that. So I will actually be showing you how most of these things operate. Let's talk about some basic computer definitions. Namely, what is the desktop? Now, most of you are obviously familiar with this word and have heard it before, but just to dive into it a little bit deeper, the desktop is the root screen of your computer functionality. It's going to be the area that has the little picture, probably of your family, maybe friends, or a landscape of some kind. In this case, it's a fish. And it also has your most used icons on it as well. It's going to be the area that you're going to really start all of your computer basics on. It's the area that first pops up when you start Windows. What is a window? A window is going to be anything that is not the desktop. A window is going to be if you open up, like, let's say a Word document or music or pictures or folders, the My Documents folder, Internet Explorer window, anything like that. It's going to open up in a window. It's basically anything that is not your desktop. And again, all of you are probably pretty familiar with the window itself. Now, a couple of neat things with the window. Windows 7 has very intuitively added some nice features to Windows. As you'll notice that unlike Windows XP, it's a bit of a transparent background at the top. You can click and hold to drag them around at the top. Of course, most of you are familiar with the close, maximize, which is in the middle, and then the minimize, which is at the very left. And if you hit that, it minimizes it to your taskbar, which we'll cover in a second. But Windows 7 has also added some nice resizing features. For example, you can dock Windows to the left. So basically, if I bump it to the left side of the screen, it docks it to the left. I can pull it off. And the same happens if I try to dock it to the right. Boom, it just maximizes right to the right side, and I can pull it off. If I bump it to the top, I can maximize it full screen, and I can simply just drag it right off. So Windows 7 really has added some very nice window organization and window management within itself. Makes it very easy for the end user. Now, a taskbar. A taskbar is going to be the bar that is usually on the bottom of your screen, and it will contain your quick launch icons, which Windows 7 has integrated actually all of those just directly into each other. For those of you who are using Windows XP, it looks more like this. It has the green start button at the very left, your quick launch icons right here that are hugging next to the start menu. These are your startup programs on the right side. But for those of you on Windows 7, here you have the start button on the left, and then, of course, again, the information panel here on the right side. The neat thing about Windows 7 is that on the taskbar on the right side, you'll notice that there is this little sort of square thing. Now, what happens if you hit that is it minimizes every window that you have open. So let's go ahead and just have a standard Internet Explorer window open, and also, for that matter, a folder window open. If we hit that little square point on the taskbar, boom, it minimizes everything so we can see our desktop. That's kind of a neat little shortcut. And again, on Windows 7, it's integrated all of your quick launch and used programs directly within one another. So in Windows XP, you'll notice that there were just like tiny little icons on there, and then anytime you opened up a program, it created new boxes along the bottom of it. But in Windows 7, they put all of that stuff together. So if we have Internet Explorer here open, you'll notice that it kind of highlights the E icon indicating that it's open. Same if I had Solitaire open. It's going to make a little highlight over that icon indicating that it's currently in use or that it's open. So that's, again, a really, really nice thing about Windows 7 is they've made that quite easy. For those of you who are, in fact, running Windows XP still, you could hit your little quick launch icons here at the bottom left, and again, it would just open the programs up right there. But it's not quite as nice as Windows 7, so I'd probably recommend those of you who are on Windows XP to upgrade to Windows 7. Primarily, it just gives you a lot more control, a lot more functionality, and another really nice thing about the Windows 7 taskbar is that if I highlight my mouse over one of these icons, it's going to give me a little bit of a preview of what exactly I'm doing. So you'll notice that if I hover my mouse over the solitaire icon, it's giving me a preview window of that. Or if I hover it over the folder icon, it's giving me a preview of that. Internet Explorer, the same thing. And the really cool thing is, like, let's say in Internet Explorer, if I have a bunch of different tabs open, like let's say google.com or yahoo.com, ask.com, if I now hover my mouse over that E icon, it's now showing me all of my current open windows, or tabs in this case, but nevertheless the same thing. So it's giving me a preview of all of this. If I have a Word document open, it would do the same thing. So this is a really, really nice, powerful function of Windows 7, or the taskbar previews. They've really done an outstanding job with the taskbar in Windows 7, and in fact, a lot of Mac users are quite envious of the taskbar in Windows 7 because they've really done such an outstanding job integrating these things. Now, Start Menu. Start Menu is, again, most of you are very familiar with the Start Menu itself. It is the button that is located to the top or bottom left on the taskbar. Windows XP has it. Windows 7 has it. You know, Windows 7, it looks like the little orb. They've gotten rid of the word "start" on it, but it looks like the little orb. And when you press that, it brings up your Start Menu. Now, the Start Menu is going to be the root of most of your Windows functions, such as getting to your desktop, your documents, your control panel, your diagnostic tools, things of that nature. So it's a really good thing to learn how powerful it really is. If we open up the Start Menu here, we notice that it gives us a list of our most recently used programs. Windows XP does this as well. Windows XP Start Menu looks very similar. The All Programs button right here at the bottom, if we hit that, it gives us now a list of every single one of the programs that's on the computer. So in the All Programs list right there. It also gives us a breakdown of our user folder, our documents folder, pictures, our control panel, which is a really important place to go to, especially if you're a G computer technician. It has the help and support section. Now, Windows Vista and Windows 7, and I believe even Windows XP, have all integrated the help and support section from their Start Menu. I very, very highly recommend people to utilize this help and support section for things that they may need. It's very, very powerful. If we open it up here, we can type in something such as, making new folder, something like that, and it gives us a list of things that we may mean. Create a new folder was one of them, and it gives us now a breakdown of how to do that. So the help and support section is very powerful in Windows XP through Windows 7. But again, back to the Start Menu here quickly. It's also going to be the place that we can shut down our computer. It's a very important place to be on the machine. In Windows Vista and Windows 7, it also introduced a searching function that's right below the All Programs list. For example, I can type in a file like README, and it will bring up all of the files named README within the Start Menu as well. I can type in a program called Solitaire. Boom, it brings that up. So the search function in Windows is very, very, very powerful and strong. When do I double click versus when do I single click? I've seen a lot of you getting this wrong. Pretty much most people double click when they're supposed to be single clicking. Most people single click when they're supposed to be double clicking. It's chaos. The problem is that there's not a real defined time of when you should do one over the other, but one of the rules of thumbs is that if you ever see the hand icon, it will always mean single click. Okay, the hand icon always means single click. The arrow icon will most of the time mean double click, but not always. For example, in Windows, on our desktop, if we have a folder that we want to open, we double click it because it's the arrow icon. So we double click. Okay? Now, in the internet, if we have a link that we want to go to, if we click on it, or if we hover over it, we notice it creates the hand icon, so it requires only a single click. However, in the Start menu, you'll notice that it is only the arrow icon, but I only have to single click the options in the Start menu. So again, rule of thumb is that if it is a hand icon, it will be a single click. If it's a arrow icon, it will sometimes but not always be a double click. Best thing to do is just sort of practice where you're at and try to figure it out on your own. But a Start menu will be a single click even though it's an arrow. However, icons and files and pictures and things like that will all require a double click with the arrow. Left click versus right clicking. The left click is going to be for most of your functions. Anytime you want to highlight an icon, anytime you want to open up a document, click a link on the internet, whatever it may be, your left click is going to be for most of your functions. So we don't need to get into too much detail with that. However, a lot of people sometimes are confused about right clicking. Right clicking is always a secondary option click. So for example, if I right click on my desktop, it gives me the options of personalizing my settings, creating a new folder, going to view, making my icons bigger, whatever it is. If I right click an icon itself, it allows me to delete it or rename it, several number of things. Of course, in a folder itself, like within a window, like let's say we're in the documents folder, you can right click on the white space in there and again do things like make your groups, make new folders, things of that nature. So the right clicking is always going to be a secondary option with your programs and with your desktop and things like that. It's the same thing with your internet. If you right click on a link, it allows you to open it in a new tab, open it in a new window. It allows you to email the links if you're using a Windows compatible email program. So the right click is a very, very powerful tool. It just allows you to do secondary options that you may not have known existed. It's one of those things where if you ever have something that you want to do within Windows, try to right click first and then seeing if it brings up an option for it, because 9 times out of 10 it will probably bring up an appropriate option. What is the recycle bin? Now, I'm sure most of you know what the recycle bin is, but I know that every single one of you are guilty about leaving it jam-packed full of junk. Every time I'm on somebody's computer, it always has gigabytes worth of information in it, and that's just not good to do. The recycle bin is basically a pre-delete place. It's where if you delete an icon, a file, a picture, whatever it is, it's going to go to your recycle bin before you more or less completely remove it from your computer altogether. It's kind of like, it's just how it is in real life. When you throw something away in the garbage, it's still in your house for a few days until you leave it on the side of the road to get picked up by the garbage people. But so that's more or less what it's like in a computer, except on a computer, you're your own garbage person and you have to decide when to more or less empty it out. In order to empty the recycle bin, let me actually get into some details with it first. On most of your computers, it will be on the desktop itself, the recycle bin. And if we open it up, in this case it's blank. Let me go ahead and just create a folder here quickly to toss one in. So I made a new folder, okay, and I tossed it in the recycle bin. I can do that either by dragging it into the recycle bin. I can, either do it this way, or I can do it by dragging it into the recycle bin icon, like hovering it over there and letting go. I'm doing this by simply dragging and dropping. To drag and drop, you click and hold something, and then you can drag it. left click and hold and then drag it around. Or what I can do is I can right click on it and say delete. Windows will say, do you want to move this to the recycle bin? Are you sure? Yes, I am. And again, you can do this with pictures, music, whatever it is. Once it is in the recycle bin, there's two options I have. I can either empty the recycle bin or restore all items. Now in this case, I only have one folder, so restoring all items will just simply restore that one particular folder. But if I make like another folder, we'll just call it test2, for example. If I have them both in the recycle bin and I realize like, oops, I really wanted both of those folders, they had important things in it, I can say restore all items. Are you sure you want to do that? And boom, now they're both back on my desktop. They will go wherever you deleted a file, whether it's your documents folder, your desktop, music, pictures, it will always go back to the folder of origin every time you restore it. Now you could also restore things individually. So if you right click on a file, you'll notice it can say, we can say restore, and boom, it's moved it from the recycle bin into the test or onto the desktop, and it's still left the other one in there. Or if I decide that I want to get rid of these things altogether, I can either hit empty the recycle bin and they'll all go away, or I can individually select something and say delete. Are you sure you want a permanent delete? Yes. So from here, I'll just go ahead and empty it all together. We could also go to the recycle bin icon at the top and right click on it, and empty recycle bin is an option there, so that's another use for our right click. But the recycle bin, most of you, again, you keep them so full and so packed, and that's just not good to do for your machine. It can slow it down, not much, but it can slow it down a little bit, and it's just not good organization. You wouldn't let your trash can in your kitchen get overfull or overfilled and spill over into the clean floors. So you don't want to really do that on your computer either. Treat your computer like you treat your house. Just keep that thing maintained. Empty it every once in a while. Right click on it, say empty recycle bin, or if you go into it, hit the empty recycle bin icon. Just make sure you keep it empty after every couple of weeks. Again, the nice thing is that it is a pre-delete, so if you delete something, you've got a few days to make up your mind whether or not you wanted it, but after a while, you should empty it out. How do you delete files and icons? Well, really, a file and an icon are more or less the same thing. You know, when you create a file, it creates an icon for that file. But in order to delete something, to put it into the recycle bin, what we want to do is we want to right-click on it and say delete. Now we can also rename things this way as well. So like, let's pretend you make a new folder and you wanted to name this like, I don't know, things like work documents, whatever it may be, or slow songs, something of that nature. If you right click on the folder or the icon, you can say rename, and I can call this slow songs. I can do that with application files. I can call this mbytes, something like that. Or if I have a file, I can do the same thing with that. Like if I go to pictures, here I have my sample pictures folder. Within here, if I have a bunch of pictures, let's say I don't like jellyfish, who does? What we can do is we can right click on it, we can say delete, or we can rename it nasty animal that stings you. So we can do a number of things with the right click on it. In this case, we'll just rename it jellyfish for consistency. But anyway, so what we do is we right click and we say delete. If we delete that, it says, are you sure you want to delete the jellyfish? Click yes, and you'll notice that it went to the recycle bin. Now let's say that you decided that you actually do quite like jellyfish and you want to get that picture back. You can either restore all items if there was multiple jellyfish pictures you had in there, or you can select one individually, click restore, and boom, our jellyfish is now back there. So that's a good example of those things. Again, I don't have any slow songs, so we're going to go ahead and put that in the recycle bin. Get rid of that. If anybody has any questions on deleting files and icons or renaming, please type them in now. And while you're typing in those questions, again, I'd like to just bring up the fact that your computer is a filing cabinet of sorts. You should keep it organized by naming things what you're comfortable with. Rename your pictures, rename your folders and your music, your files, documents. Rename them to what you think is appropriate, for helping you find them and keep them organized. A lot of people just keep their pictures, named with a long string of numbers that cameras default them as. Or a lot of people just create their folders and leave them as new folder. Go through your computer, rename things, delete the things that you don't need, and then after a few days, empty the recycle bin and get them out of there. Just keep your computer organized. Moving along, how to uninstall programs. Now this is a real gem here, because almost everybody is guilty of right-clicking a program and thinking that if they right-click it and they say delete, that it removes the program from their computer altogether, but this simply isn't true. Let me go ahead and just install a program here quickly as sake of example, and I'm going to do this fast because I'm going to actually show you how to uninstall a program in a little bit. But basically with a program on your machine, most of you have a program that has an icon on your desktop. In this case, we have this malware program. Okay? A lot of you think that if you right-click on the icon of that program and click delete, that it's gone, but it isn't. What you need to do is you need to click on Start. You then want to click on Control Panel, and this works for both Windows XP and Windows 7 and Windows Vista. So Start, Control Panel, and then you're going to want to find your Programs and Features. Now Windows Vista and Windows 7 call it Programs and Features. Windows XP calls it Add or Remove Programs. And once we open up this list, Programs and Features, or Windows XP calls it Add or Remove Programs, it will bring up a window that gives us all of the installed programs on the computer. So if you find the program that you no longer want, in this case we'll just call it this Malwarebytes one, highlight it, we do a single left click, we highlight it, click on Install, and it's going to run through the, are you sure you want to do this, blah, 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 yes. Just go through it, and boom, it's good to go. So that's how you uninstall a program. You go to Start, Control Panel, Programs and Features, or in Windows XP, Add or Remove Programs. You find your list of programs, find whatever it is you don't want, single left click it, and then click on Uninstall. And it's going to ask you, are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you're sure? Are you really, really sure? Are you really, 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 really sure? And it's probably going to try to make you not uninstall it, but nevertheless, ignore them and just uninstall it. If you don't need a program, don't keep it on your computer. And what I might even recommend to some of you is going through that uninstall program after the class, finding the things you don't need and just uninstalling them. Chances are, if you see it in there and you don't know what it is, it probably means you don't use it. So I would uninstall it. I'd make a habit of doing that. A lot of the times when you're floating around on the internet, programs just install themselves because the internet's not a very safe place. You can sometimes go to the uninstall programs if it's not a virus or something like that, find it in there and uninstall it. So I recommend doing that. Installing a program. A majority of you probably know how to install a program, or if you don't really know how to do it, a majority of you have probably at least done it once before. The thing is, though, is a lot of people think that if you download something from the internet, it automatically installs. This is not true. For example, if we go to the internet and we go to, let's say adobe.com because we want to download Adobe Acrobat Reader, or it's actually just called Adobe Reader now, and we try to download this. Well, download now. It's in Internet Explorer 9 and in Firefox, some of the other ones, it will give you a little indication saying, are you sure you want to download the Adobe Reader program? You can either run or save it in Internet Explorer. Firefox or Google Chrome does not allow you to run programs. It requires you to save them. But you can either run or save it. In this case, we'll save it. And it's going to download it. And here it says, do you want to run it, open the folder, whatever you do. We'll just go ahead and click open folder. And here the program is. Now, we've downloaded the program, but we have not installed it. And a majority of you are very guilty to have huge downloads folders filled with junk that you've either installed or haven't yet installed, or there's 1,000 different installs, So once you download something, it doesn't mean you've installed it. You still need to install it. In Microsoft Windows, anytime you have an installable application, it will be in what's called .exe format. It stands for executable, but that's what it will have at the end, .exe. So you do have to basically double-click it and run it to install it. In order to do that, I'll just use this Malwarebytes thing as a sake of example. What we do is we can double-click on it. It says, are you sure you want to run this file? We click yes. They're all going to do that. It's a security measurement to ensure that you're not installing a virus. It's going to ask us what language we want to install it in. Most will do this. Most programs will ask you the language. In this case, we're going to go to English. I think a majority of us here all speak it. Click on OK. Now again, for a majority of you, you can basically just keep hitting next, 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 and it installs. So for example, in this case, it says, welcome to the installation wizard. We click on next. We're going to, of course, read this long license agreement because we all read the license agreements. And we'll click on I accept. We'll click on next. It's going to give us more gibberish that all of us, I'm sure, read. Click on next. Click on and here it's going to say what do you want to, or rather where do you want to install it. Unless you're an advanced user, I would never change this. Just let it install where it wants to install. So we click on next. It's going to say what do you want to name the program. Again, unless you're an advanced user, I do not recommend changing this. So we'll click on next. It's going to say do you want to create an icon for this thing. Of course, we'll click next. And then install. So again, it was pretty much next, 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 and boom, there it is. So again, here we have it on our desktop, the program right there. And as we just previously learned, if we move it to the recycle bin, that does not mean it's been deleted. We have to go to Start, Control Panel, Programs and Features, or Add and Remove Programs in Windows XP. Find the program that we don't want. Highlight it with a single left click and uninstall. Now, highlighting things in Windows is pretty much always going to be the same. Basically, if you have some pictures or whatever, it's always going to be a single left click in order to highlight an item, and then of course a double left click in order to open it up. And I'll wait a few seconds. And in the meantime, I'd like to also just offer some advice that, again, a majority of you have seriously clogged downloads folders. Windows, Internet Explorer, Firefox, Chrome, all of these internet browsers, when they download files, they put them in the downloads folder. And I'll show you just quickly how to get there. So if everybody could actually please pay attention to this. If you click on Start, and you click on your user folder, in my case it's called administrator, but for most of you it might be your name, it may be called user, a number of different things, but if you click on your user folder, you'll have probably a folder in there called downloads. Windows XP users will not have this, so this is specific to Vista and 7 users. In Windows XP, it puts them in your documents folder, okay? But either way, whether it's putting it in your downloads folder or your documents folder, I would clean these things out. So again, Windows 7 users, go to your downloads folder. And a majority of you are going to have 1,000 things in here. And there are 1,000 things you don't need. So go in there, right click on them, and say delete. Get rid of them. Move them to the recycle bin. And then when you're done with those in a few days, empty the recycle bin. Get rid of that stuff. You don't need it. You can always re-download programs on the internet. It is very, very rare that you're going to need to save a download. What are shortcuts? And how do I make them? A shortcut is nothing more than really than what it is. It's just a quick way to access a very frequently used program or file. So it's just simply a shortcut to a program or file. Whether it's a picture or a music or a document that you may frequently use. That's what a shortcut is. In order to make a shortcut, you can do it pretty much anywhere in the computer. You can either do it within a folder. So if I wanted to create a shortcut of this README thing, I can do that within a folder. I can do that within for a picture, or whatever. But I can also do it within the Start menu. Okay. Now, I very frequently have people asking me, how do I move programs from within the Start menu onto their desktop? Well, what you do is you go to your Start menu. Okay. And you then click on All Programs. You find the program that you want to create a shortcut for, whether it's Microsoft Office or a game or something like that. In this case, I'm going to use Solitaire for the example because we all love Solitaire. So we'll find Solitaire in the list at the bottom here. And what we can do is we can right-click on it. We click on Send To, and then Desktop parentheses create shortcut. If we hit that, we now notice there was a shortcut to Solitaire that has been placed on our desktop. Same thing can be done with a file or a picture. Let's use the jellyfish again. We'll right-click on him. We'll click Send To, and we'll click Desktop parentheses create shortcut. It's now created a shortcut to the jellyfish on our desktop. It's not the jellyfish picture. You'll notice there's a little arrow indicating it's a shortcut. So if I delete it, you'll notice the jellyfish picture is still there. But I can also right-click on a file, be it a document, a picture, or a music, whatever, and say Create Shortcut. And what it does is it just creates a shortcut directly in the folder next to it. Now, obviously, that's pretty useless because if you have a file, there's no need to create a shortcut in the folder that it's already sitting in. So, in my opinion, the best way to create a shortcut is simply right-clicking it, saying Send To, and then clicking Desktop parentheses create shortcut. And do this for the things that you use often. Again, whether it's a document that you have a template for, like your letterhead or something like that, or a program that you use frequently, Microsoft Word, Microsoft Outlook, something like that. Make shortcuts. If you create a shortcut, you can move it around to different folders. So, for example, I can move that jellyfish shortcut into my Documents folder. To me, though, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. In my opinion, I think shortcuts are best reserved for the desktop. So again, best way to do that, right-click on it, say Send To, and then Desktop parentheses create shortcut. So that is how we create shortcuts. How do I create folders? I've already pretty much been over that, but I'm going to go over it again because a lot of people have trouble with it. Most of you even may know how to make a folder, but you just don't utilize this knowledge. If you're on your desktop, you can right-click and say New, and then click then click on Folder, and it creates a new folder. Or if you're in your Documents folder, you can right-click, say New, click on Folder, and it allows you to name it something. We'll call it Work Files. Every time you create a new folder, whether it's on your desktop or in your documents or in your pictures, wherever it is, it's going to ask you to name it. We'll call it this one personal, file, something like that. Organize your computer. Get your files into folders. That's what they're there for. Keep your computers organized. So creating folders is a very good skill. Right-clicking, New, Folder. It works pretty much anywhere on the computer. So I very highly recommend people, utilize this knowledge. File systems. This is a very complicated term. It's basic at its root definition, but it can become very, very vast And file systems are very complex on a low level computing level, with programming, things like that. Your computer is nothing more than a filing cabinet, which is you probably have an actual file cabinet sitting right next to your computer. But a computer is nothing more than an electronic file cabinet. Treat it as such. Create folders and organize them. Put your pictures in your pictures folder, and then make subfolders. As you'll notice here, your computer is a hierarchical file system. If you have your root user folder, you'll have your documents, your pictures, your music folders all in there, your downloads folder. And then once you go in those, you'll have subfolders in there, and then in those folders you can have subfolders. So, again, a computer is nothing more than an electronic filing system. If we click on the Start menu and click on our user folder, it's going to be this is sort of like the root folder for our computer usage. My case, again, it's called Administrator. For some of you, it may be named Joe Schmo or Roger Schmo, whatever it is. Again, maybe it's just called User or Owner, whatever it is. We click on it, and you'll notice that it gives us all of our data folders: contacts, my desktop, downloads, favorites, documents, music, pictures, videos. Every time you have a user account on a computer, some of you may share computers with your husbands, wives, friends, family members, whatever it is. If you share computers and you have multiple user accounts, like let's call the accounts mom, dad, and son and daughter, so you have 4 user accounts. Whatever account you're logged into will give you that username or that user folder at the top right of the Start menu. Okay? So if we go to our Start menu and we go to the top right, it gives us that user folder. In this case, let's pretend it's called Son. We click on it, and Son's user folder will have all of your son's information in there. Daughter will have the same. Dad will have the same. Mom will have the same. You will never see your files mix and mingled together with one another. You all have your own personal user folder, and it's the root of your data. So if you click on it again, it gives you access to your documents, your music, your pictures folder, things like that. Your user folders are actually located in an even deeper place. They're located on your hard drive, which if you go to Start menu and click on Computer, it gives you the My Computer window, in which case you have your hard drive. And if you click on that, we then see Users folder. And on that, we would have, mom, dad, son, daughter. In my case, it's simply just administrator. But so even your users folder is sitting in a deeper embedded place. The hard drive is your root folder. It's actually, what it is the hard drive is your filing cabinet. And within there, you have your program files. You have your Windows folder, which is your operating system. Don't mess with that one. And then you have your users folder, and again you have your different user account folders in there. In my case, administrator, and you've got then your data in there. So treat your computers like filing cabinets. You wouldn't just haphazardly throw files into a filing cabinet. You would make nice, organized filing systems. Do the same with your computer. Put your pictures in your pictures folder. Music in your music folder, documents in your documents folder. Make subfolders. If you have a large set of work documents, make a new folder called Work Documents in your documents folder and pop those in there. It's the same thing on your desktop. A lot of you are incredibly guilty of having a million icons on your desktop. Make folders for those bad boys. Put your programs in one folder and documents in another. Just keep your computer organized. It is nothing more than a big filing cabinet, or rather an electronic filing cabinet. How to log into the wireless. Now, almost every computer these days has wireless. Whether it's a desktop or a laptop, almost every computer comes with wireless built in. Laptops for the past several years have all had wireless built in. Desktops are now starting to get them as well. So, a majority of you do a lot of traveling. A lot of you go to coffee shops, things like that, hotels, whatever. You're going to have different wireless you're gonna have a lot of different wireless access points to log into when you travel around, or even in your own homes. Most of you have wireless routers that you can log on to. In Windows XP and in Windows 7, there's a little icon on the bottom right of your taskbar that indicates your wireless connections. In Windows 7, it looks like the little cell tower. Like if you have a cell phone and it gives you your signal strength, it looks more or less like that on Windows 7. You'll notice that if you're not on a wireless network, the icon will be gray with a little yellow sun looking thing. On Windows XP, it will look like a computer monitor with a red X through it. But what you basically do is you single click on that particular icon. Let's say Windows 7, for example. If you click on it, it will bring up then your wireless connections. Now in that, or rather in Windows XP, it's going to look like this. This is going to be the list. But in Windows 7, it's going to be a little bit tinier and a little more, a little nicer looking. And you're going to go ahead and click on your network. Hopefully you click on your own, not your neighbor's or something like that. And you can then click on Connect. And what it then does is it's going to ask you to type in your network password. If you had a G technician set up your wireless, he probably gave you the password. Or if you set up your own, you probably have it written down somewhere. But nevertheless, you then type in your password, click on OK, and then boom, you're on the wireless. So if any of you have any questions in regards to getting on your wireless, please type it in now. But that's pretty much how you do it. There's an icon on the bottom right of your taskbar. You click on it, it's going to give you a list. You highlight the one that's yours, you click Connect, type in your password, there you go. Some of you may not even have passwords on your wireless connection. That's fine. It's not recommended, but nevertheless, you can just log in directly. Updating Windows. Now this one's an important one. A lot of you think that you've updated Windows, but you may not have. A lot of your Windows installations are geared to do it automatically, but it still doesn't install them completely. Or rather, doesn't install all of the Windows updates. In order to update your Windows, you want to click on Start, All Programs. You're going to want to find the Windows Update icon sitting somewhere in there. And if you click it, it's then going to give you a window that probably looks like this. It will have the little exclamation point on the shield, and it's going to ask you to install updates. So if you click on Install Updates, it will then, after a while, give you something that says Windows is up to date. If it already looks like this with the green check mark, you're good to go. But if it does not have the green check mark, you need to install additional updates. Windows XP will have the same thing. You go to Start All Programs and then Windows Update, but it's not going to be in this menu. It's going to look slightly different, but nevertheless, you can just click on Install Updates, and it will install your updates. So again, Start, All Programs, Windows Update. That's going to be the same for XP and for Vista and 7. And in this case, I don't even practice what I preach because I apparently have some updates I have to install. And we want to click on Install Updates. I'm not going to bother doing that now, but nevertheless, that's how you do it. I recommend, again, all of you, after this presentation, install your updates. Most of you probably have some to install, so do that. They are important. They're good for stability. They're good for increasing performance. They're good for security. Updates are important. Make sure you install them. Windows Task Manager. Now, the Windows Task Manager is a very important tool, okay? A lot of you are familiar with the old Control-Alt-Delete adage. It wasn't invented by Microsoft, but they sure made it famous. The Task Manager is going to be a place that you can manage your computer if it ever freezes up or acts a little bit funky, something like that. Now, if you hit Control-Alt-Delete, it brings up the Task Manager window. Okay? And you'll notice that there's a couple of different tabs on here, but we only want to focus on the Applications and the Processes tab. These other four, we have to ignore them. Those are for advanced users only. So we have the applications and the processes window, or tabs rather. Now the applications and the processes tabs are actually fairly similar. The applications tab is going to be a more user-friendly version of the processes tab. But a lot of you will call me sometimes and say, hey, my computer is frozen, when it really is not. Really, it's just a program that is frozen. So, don't call me anymore with that. You can go ahead and unlock your computer yourselves now. And by the way, I was obviously joking. Call me if you need to. But nevertheless, you can hit Control-Alt-Delete. You can open up your task manager. And if there's ever a program that's frozen, it will probably say something along the lines of not responding. That's under the Applications tab. Okay? So if you hit Control-Alt-Delete, go to your task manager, and obviously you hit Control-Alt-Delete because you think my computer's not running quite well, or a program is frozen, or I can't get out of something, whatever it is. You hit Control-Alt-Delete, go to your Applications tab, and try to find something in there that says it's not responding. You single left click to highlight it, and you hit End Task. That's going to close that application that's hung up. Okay? It'll work with Internet Explorer, it'll work with Solitaire, it doesn't matter what it is. Let's pretend I have Internet Explorer window open. And for that matter, let's pretend I have Solitaire open. If I go to my task manager, and again, Control-Alt-Delete, let's start task manager. Here it is. And in the applications folder, it has the main running applications. Here's Internet Explorer and here's Solitaire. Let's pretend Solitaire is frozen and it's locked up my computer a bit. We can highlight it and click End Task. It's gone. Same with Internet Explorer. I can click on it, End Task. It's gone. Now the Processes tab is a slightly more advanced version of the Applications tab, but I still recommend basic users at least having an idea of what it does. The Processes tab is going to have every running application in the list, not just the user-friendly one, okay? So it's going to have every running application. In this case, if we open up Internet Explorer, I'm going to go ahead and drag it and bump it to the left side of my screen there. It's now going to have something running in here called iExplorer.exe. It stands for Internet Explorer. Here there's a little descriptions bar, okay, that allows me to see exactly what it is, and in this case it's called Internet Explorer. Most of you may need to make your task manager window bigger. By doing that, you can go to the corner here and clicking and holding and dragging it out to make it bigger. Okay? But nevertheless, if you have a program that you know is locked up, whether it's AOL or Microsoft Word or Internet Explorer, something like that, and it's not finding it in the Applications tab, you can go to your Processes tab and just look through the descriptions. Look through for something that says Internet Explorer or AOL, whatever it is. Now, if you click and highlight the program, you can hit End Process. Are you sure you want to end the process? Yes. And boom, it's gone. Alright, and you can do that with Solitaire. Let's open up Solitaire here. Now in my Processes tab, something in here opened up, probably called Solitaire. Let's see if we can find that here. And it'll be in here somewhere. Ah, right there. Solitaire.exe. It's called Solitaire Game in this case, but we can highlight it, click End Process. So a lot of you really do need to learn this task manager system because it's very good for unlocking your computer if it's ever having a problem. Here's another great use for it, and this one is where it's going to be important. Okay? If you are on Internet Explorer and you think a virus is about to come in for whatever reason, you can you can hit Control-Alt-Delete, start Task Manager if it doesn't already just open up. And then you can find Internet Explorer either in the Applications tab or the Processes tab. You can highlight it and hit End Task. Okay? That will kill Internet Explorer, hopefully before the virus gets in. So that's a very good use for it. Increasing the computer's resolution for people with bad eyes. Now, unfortunately, this trick only works for people who are on Windows 7 and Windows Vista. Okay, this does not work for Windows XP. Another good reason for those of you who are on Windows XP to upgrade to Windows 7. How you know that you're on Windows XP is if your start menu is the green button that says Start. That's how you know you're on Windows XP. If it's just a little orb, it means you're on Windows 7, which is a good thing. Now, how you do this is on Windows 7, you want to right-click your desktop, okay? You then want to click on Personalize. And then at the bottom left, you'll see something called Display. And then in there, it's going to say, make what you see easier to read on your screen. We can either make it smaller, medium, or larger. So for those of you with bad eyes, you may want to click on medium or larger, whatever it is. I have mine set to smaller, but if you have bad eyes, select the one that's appropriate for you. Click on Apply, and that will make everything larger. It'll make your fonts larger, your icons larger. It'll make everything larger so it's easier to see. Okay, so again, to get there, we right-click, go to Personalize, go to Display on the bottom left, and then select our appropriate size, and then click on Apply. Essential keyboard shortcuts. These are going to be for people, these are going to be very easy to use shortcuts that are, in my opinion, essential for your day-to-day use. Let's start with the copying, cutting, and pasting and undoing stuff. To copy a file, or text, or document, or picture, or music, or a link on Internet Explorer, anything like that. What you want to do is you want to highlight that item and hit Control-C for Control Copy. Okay? Let me go ahead and show you a quick example here. Let's say I want to make a copy of this README file. Okay? I can hit Control-C, and then if I go to like my desktop, I can hit Control-V for paste, and the README file is now also on my desktop. It's not a shortcut, it's a copy of it. Shortcuts are not copies, they're just shortcuts. This is a copy. Okay? Now I know that Control-V is not Control-P for paste, it's Control-V for paste, but think of it as vaste instead of paste. They obviously wanted to keep everything sort of condensed in that one location so you can use it with your one hand. So they put C, Control-C for copy, Control-X for cut. Think of just some scissors, you know, cutting an X. And then, of course, Control-V for vaste/paste. And if you want to cut a file, like let's say this README document, again, I can hit Control-X. And you'll notice that it's kind of grayed out a little bit. And if I go to my desktop, I get a Control-V and paste that document on my desktop, and you'll notice it's no longer in my documents, it's now on my desktop. Now you can also simply drag and drop things in and out of places as well. But really the most important thing is the reason why you may want to copy or paste something is, let's say you're in a document and I want to say the dog and cat crossed the road to meet the chicken. I can highlight this text, hit Control-C, and then I can hit Control-V to paste it. And I can paste it as many times as I want. Now let's pretend I have a sentence or a couple of things, and I realize that, oops, I actually wanted this particular line right here at the bottom of the screen. I can go ahead and hit Control-X for Control Cut. And then I can hit Control-V where I want to put it, and it just moved it from that one location to the other. Okay? Now here's another really nice one. Oops. Is Control-A. Control-A is the select everything option. If I hit Control A, you'll notice that everything just became highlighted in my document. Let's say I go to an Internet Explorer window, okay? And I decided that I want to copy some of this text I wanted to copy some of this text to a document file. I can hit Control A, and you notice that it made everything blue. I can hit Control C to then copy it. I can go over to my document. I can hit Control V, and here it has gone ahead and pasted all of that stuff onto a document file. Now let's pretend that I wanted to get rid of this all because, oops, I didn't actually want to copy all that, Internet Explorer window. I can hit Control A, it highlights everything. I hit Delete, and boom, it's gone. Now let's pretend that I actually did want all of that stuff and that I made a mistake by deleting it. I can hit Control Z, as in Z, Control Z, and that undoes it. So undo is Control Z. Think of it as undo. So again, Control C is copy, Control X cut, Control V paste, Control Z is undo. And undo allows you to undo any sort of copying, cutting, or any other actions that you may have done in the computer. Let's say you accidentally, like move or delete a file. If you hit Control Z, sometimes it can undo that. Of course, we all know that Control-Alt-Delete brings up the task manager, as we discussed. And another really nice one is Alt F4. If you have a window open, okay, and you want to go ahead and close it, rather than going up to the red X at the top, which takes, obviously a second to do, and we all like to save our seconds, we can hit Alt and F4, and boom, it closes it. Okay? So again, open up we have an open window, whether it's internet or a document. I can hit Alt and then F4, it's closed. Alt F4, it's closed. Oops. Alt F4, it's closed. There we go. And that works for any open window. So I didn't even have to move the mouse in that time. I can just hit Alt F4 and it all closes up. So that's also a really nice shortcut. Let's go ahead and do a quick recap here. Today we discussed various definitions for the Microsoft Windows operating system. We had step-by-step tutorials on how to do most of the basic and important functions of Windows. Answered things like what a desktop is, familiarized yourself with the task manager. We went over how to install updates, creating shortcuts. Otherwise, everybody have a great night. Thanks for coming, and good night.